Good evening, all. How is everyone? Chat is already filling up. That is always my favorite thing to see.
Oh, here comes one of the cats. Oh, hello.
They heard you
But-
talking about him.
You're just going to see a tail just go past.
But is it bringing you a rat? That's the important
Well,
part.
that was the first thing I checked. I was like looking at its mouth and thinking, "Have you bought me a present?"
Wouldn't that be a way? Wouldn't that be quite the way to start the stream?
Somebody's jumping up and down with a rat flying around. Yeah.
Well, just so you know, this is in fact the eclectic birthday stream, so it would be very appropriate for the cat to bring you a present.
Oh, it would be. No pizza though, which I'm kind of disappointed about. It's far too late in the UK for pizza.
But did you bring crisps?
No, because I literally have not moved since the start of Hump Day Chinwag. I haven't been downstairs yet. I haven't even made myself a drink. Shocking. Literally bounced out of one stream straight onto Slice and Dice.
So this is your way of subtly telling someone who might be watching to bring you a cuppa?
No, she's in bed. She's been in bed for a couple of hours now.
Well, but once she knows the mouse is gone, I'm pretty sure she'll get back up again. It was just she didn't want to be around the mouse.
No, that's it. She's asleep. She's asleep. Don't forget,
sorry.
it's 2300 in the UK. It's not like American time.
Yes,
Freedom time.
I no longer believe that anyone in the UK actually sleeps.
I mean, I don't very often, to be honest. Let's face it.
Between you and Lance and,
Abe.
Yeah, the rest of none of you sleep. I refuse to believe that, and it's just a sleepless zone in the all of Europe.
Yeah, I've got some Italian friends who could probably corroborate that. They start dinner, round the time that it is right there for you, Toomby.
Yep. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Some of the people, I'll wake up. I'll say I'll wake up. I kind of like lie in bed for a good 3 or 4 hours listening to music, just because my brain doesn't switch off because I've got a coder's tism brain. And I'm just like, oh yeah, this is a good song and this, that, and the other. And then get up and then it's like, oh, who's streaming? Oh, someone else is streaming. And it's like you pop into their chat, you say hello. And it's like everyone just perpetually thinks you're awake 24/7.
Is that why the Brits have a reputation for loving queuing? That's like your micro sleep. You just stand in line for a while and then
you just
switch
switch off.
Yeah,
switch off. We are the masters at being able to adapt in queues. We just process it like no other. It's great.
Well, Stupenzo too. Like I'll get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and he's streaming and I'm like, why are you up so early? And he's like, because I haven't been to bed yet.
Yeah, because he hasn't been to bed.
And then he's back. And then he's back online at 11 o'clock that morning. So.
And the funny thing with Stupenzo, normally I jump into his streams first thing in the morning. So once I start work in the morning, usually 7 o'clock a.m., and he's still going from the night before. So he's like, can always tell what time it is because the Brits start joining in with his chat. So he actually uses it as a marker for how long he's been streaming now.
The Brits and the farmers. Brits and the farmers.
Brits and farmers.
Okay, so on the off chance that anyone doesn't know who Tomby is, I don't know what planet you're from, but Tomby, you should introduce yourself to yourself to the new people.
Introduce myself to the new people. Thank you very much indeed, Eclectic Goat, for the invite to what is my second Slice and Dice, where the first Slice and Dice talked about a video game, Final Fantasy XIV, that come to tabletop, which was absolutely superb to see. And obviously, I'm a gamer, I'm a variety streamer. I talk about absolutely everything on podcasts. I do a podcast with a panel of between 8 and 10 people at times. So that's the Hump Day Chinwag, which I literally just jumped off. I do a twice weekly podcast with the wife, 2 T's in a pod, where we mostly talk these days about moving to America, which is on the agenda next 2 to 5 years, to escape out of the UK, the oppressiveness of the UK. I like to look after small streamers, small creators, provide video guides, guidance documents on how to do certain things, how to be a streamer themselves, anything from some of the applications that they can use, whether it's OBS, EVMux, StreamYards, all that good stuff, to some of the niceties of doing stuff with your chat or doing stuff with little avatars running across the bottom of your screen. So I dabble in everything, guys. Been doing it now for almost 2 years, so coming up to the second year anniversary for when I first went live. And yeah, you can find me streaming on YouTube, Rumble, Kick, Twitter, Twitch, all at the same time, because why not be greedy with all that bandwidth? And I've got to make use of having 2 gig fiber internet connection. So why not just swallow all the bandwidth from everybody else, get streaming to everywhere, and meet new friends along the way. So thank you very much indeed for the invite. Absolute pleasure to be here. And Dan and Tiny, pleasure to meet you as well.
Yeah, Tomby is like the cool uncle that, does all the tech stuff that nobody else knows how to do.
Yeah,
I
I make magic.
I unfortunately do not have the computer capability to, even stream to this and Twitter at the same time. So I've tried a couple times and my computer went, ha, I don't think so. Aaron.
Sure, yeah. So I think the pre-show question was, how do we get into gaming? Is that right?
A little bit about how you got into gaming and
Yeah, yeah.
just a couple sentences about you.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm Aaron. I am here to talk about Tiny D10. It's a rules-like kind of genre agnostic tabletop RPG system that I put together about 10 years ago so that I could play with my kids. At the time, I had a good game group and a really good thing going, and we all got orders to different locations in the United States. So our game group broke up. I initially got into tabletop games about 15 years ago in tech school, and like I said, picked up a really good game group there, and we played for a few years, and then that was primarily with OD&D, so with Basic Expert. Um, and yeah, like I said, once the group broke up, I still wanted to keep playing, and I had 2 boys at the time. I've got 5 now, but they were 3 and 5. So I wanted to put something very simple together so that we could kind of start experimenting with role playing games, and it just kind of grew from there.
Okay, thank you very much. For those of you who may remember, Aaron was going to be on episode 9, and due to unfortunate circumstances was unable to make it, but we are delighted to find he was not kidnapped by the FBI, which was the general vote at the time. Because despite what Tom B jokes about, the freedom of the United States, many of us have FBI jokes.
We've got our troubles too.
Yeah.
Dan.
Yeah, my name is Dan Prisco Buxbaum. By day, I'm an environmental scientist. I have a bachelor's degree in geology and a master's degree in biology. And by night, I'm the owner of Paleo Gaming. We just published our first tabletop role-playing game called Omega Horizon. It's a high sci-fi tabletop role-playing game. And to answer the question of how I got into gaming, it's sort of an apocryphal story. When I was 12 years old, I found an original first edition 1981 TSR D&D basic set in my garage that no one would lay claim to who it belonged to. And so 12-year-old me dug into it and fell in love and started running games for my friends from school. And, decades later, here I am.
Yeah, those of us that have been doing it for decades. Every time someone says, I've been gaming for years, it's been like 10 years, I just go, ugh.
Oh, my sweet summer child.
For anyone who has missed, I don't usually introduce myself, but I have reasons for today. I am the Eclectic Goat. I have been I have been gaming for at least 35 years. I'm afraid to do the math any further back than that. I have been running for about 25 years. I do mainly kind of darker games. What I really like are thought-provoking games, and the kind of darker themed ones seem to lean more towards that. But pretty much any genre. I do Numenera, which is fantasy. I do Slay Industries, which is sci-fi. I do Shadow of the Demon Lord, which is like if D&D and Call of Cthulhu had a baby. So pretty much, as long as it's kind of interesting. I almost never get to play, but when I do, I sort of like fun, lighthearted stuff. The reason that I am going over all this today is that I discovered this morning that today is apparently the first birthday of the Eclectic Herd. This channel is officially 1 year old. I was really happy that Tomby was scheduled for this because he got to be on the very first Slice and Dice, and he gets to be on the birthday stream.
Yep,
So
it's an honor.
this seems appropriate. This means, of course, that you are now going to be like, on for the thousand person stream and the
Oh
the
yeah.
4,000 person.
Oh, 100%. You've got to scale it up. So you got today's stream, you've got the birthday stream, the 50th, the 100th, the 200th, the 500th, the 1,000. You scale it up constantly. I'll be there. I'll be there.
Tomby will become the anniversary marker of everything.
Yes.
So as some of you may or may not know, we are changing the format of this channel a little bit. At the end of this month, I'm going to be stepping back from some stuff, but Slice and Dice is going to be continuing. We have a new Discord in place, and I am beginning to get absolutely flooded with creators interested in doing stuff. So I'm going to be collabing with some other YouTubers and interviewers to do some reviews. I may, if we get that far, start doing some online one-shot live plays. Probably not campaign stuff, because I bore really easily, and because I always want to try new games. Um, so lots going forward, and I would really like to hear everyone's feedback on the things you'd like to see. So I think most people in this chat are on the Discord. If you would at some point pop over and talk about how you would like to see this channel change a little bit, we're going to be in the works for the next couple of months. Saying hello to the chat. Rio is, as is almost always the case, the first one in. Farv is here to say congratulations. Thank you very much, Farv. Good to
How you
see
doing,
you.
Fav?
Goddess is here as well. Our supermod Eraserhead. We had this discussion earlier about the fact that, if we could get Aaron here with a pineapple on pizza, we could watch Eraserhead. Oh, I want you to know, Eraser, there was the intro thumbnail that I had for the birthday pizza. I want you to know that Bing tried really hard to put blackberries on that pizza every time I tried to create it. So I thought that would entertain you. I don't know how you feel about blackberries on pizza, but Rachel is here. Rachel, I'm not sure Rachel has ever missed a show either. Though she does tend to run in and halfway through and say, "I made it." Grizzled Entertainment, hail! And Hunter, who has been on the show earlier. Aaron, I believe that you are familiar with Hunter. I think he's the one who introduced us, in fact.
He is, yeah. He's the one who connected us, which I am very grateful for.
Jack Tarlad, who has also been on this show in the past, and who I believe I will be on one of his shows in 6 weeks, I think? Something like that. Math. I can't math.
I'm kind of jealous that you're going to go on his show again. Well, you for your first time. I'm trying to get him. I'm going to have to bribe him to get me on again because I had such a good fun with the read and roll stream that he did. Just the
Yeah,
old
that was-
read and the read and adventure books, the Ian Livingstone stuff. Ever since I was a kid, they were just fantastic, and that stream was amazing. Such good laugh.
Yeah, that was so much fun to watch. I kind of struggle sometimes watching people do, live streams of either video games, because my eyes suck, or tabletop role-playing games because I bore easily. It's like sports, I love playing, but watching is just, it's just not there. But yeah, that was great fun. I enjoyed that a lot, and I'm really looking forward to the show, so. Comics Dad, welcome. I hope that you get to hang out for a little bit. I know you usually have a stream tonight, so we're happy to see you for as long as you can make it. Jill, I see you around all the time. I'm not sure you've ever made it here, and I'm very excited to have you here. Thank you very much for coming.
How you doing, Jill? Good to see you.
Prophetic is here. Welcome.
Nee. Just nee.
And I am trying to remember what your name is on Discord, because the fact that you have 2 different names confuses the heck out of me all the time. I refer to him as Jod. So, welcome, Jod. All right. I am sure we will have more people pop in as we go. But it's a great crew to start, and I'm happy to have all of you here. Tomby, if you would like to start us off.
Right. Okay. So some of the first games that I played when I was much younger, a lot hairier and a lot less grey. Basically, when I was about 12. Myself, my older brother, and I both got 2 tabletop games, or 2 games to play. He got Space Crusade. I got Hero Quest. And one of the recent additions to my collection is the Jungles of Delphrak expansion for Hero Quest. Now, obviously, this came out May 2024, but I only managed to pick this up fairly recently because I've been going through the process of moving my current office downstairs, and a lot of the stuff coming out of the loft and going up the loft, and all of a sudden it was like Hero Quest was just winking at me as if to say, "Yes, Daddy, you have found me again." So I thought, do you know what? Why not invest some time, get back into Hero Quest, playing it, and experiencing some of the fun that I had when I was a child, and suddenly looked up online at some of the later expansions, and this was the most recent one, and I was like, do you know what? What better way of expanding upon Hero Quest with one of the most recent ones? So basically, the expansion released in 2024. Like I said, brought about 2 new heroes to the universe. So you've got both Berserker and the Explorer, which obviously, from a person who plays World of Warcraft, and I've played World of Warcraft since 2004, continuously up until present day. And I think I've sunk like 22,000 hours into World of Warcraft. Literal years of my life has disappeared just from playing that game. So when you've got things like a Berserker, which is so similar to the Warriors and the Fury Warriors from World of Warcraft, this game, or this expansion, just hits home all of the feelings from a more visceral sense, more physical sense, from playing World of Warcraft, which is all virtual online with friends, to having characters that obviously exist. And let me get this by the power of Grayskull, and let's zoom in. Let's get it to a good spot. So we've got our raptors, which are additional pets for the game. So one of the things that came with this is animal companions. So you've got both the raptor and the bear cat hybrid, adding obviously some depth to the quests. There is 16 new quests within the actual game itself, or within the expansion. So you've got 16 new quests to crack on with, new bosses. So you've got where's my finger? This one up here. So you've got things like the giant serpent, the gorilla, as some of the additional adversaries throughout all of this expansion. And obviously 29 really good miniatures throughout. You got your game cards, you've got your cardboard pieces, and a lot of it was, let me zoom out away from my face because I'm scary as hell. And a lot of this from certainly from my youth. One of the things I always enjoyed was having the physical pieces to be able to interact with this world, and it always stoked the imagination as a child to play these types of games. Now, my older brother, obviously, he had Space Crusade, I had the Hero Quest. But I can still remember that Christmas, both myself and my older brother were bouncing from one adventure in space to another adventure in Hero Quest. And it just made sense to obviously show this as my contribution. Now, obviously, I've got a few others. Now, I won't go into these. These are for another day. So some Space Marines. and a few others. And I will show you this one last one because this one's quite cool. So this was the other awesome one that obviously I bought because of World of Warcraft. But Hero Quest was what I wanted to share with the class today. The detail within the books and within the miniatures is absolutely fantastic, and something that I've certainly found across all of the games that I've purchased over the course of the last couple of years. So, like I said to Goat, a lot of the opportunity for these games didn't really exist for me as I was growing up because of being in the armed forces. So my dad was in the armed forces. We moved around heavily, and I spent a lot of my time abroad where simply we couldn't get access to certain things like this. So when I came back to the UK, and we're talking back in the early 90s when we moved back to the UK, suddenly I had access to stuff like this. And ever since then, it's all been a case of catch up with the stuff that I've missed out on. And this Hero Quest was no different. And the artwork throughout is absolutely fantastic. I mean, the attention to detail when you're going through the actual book itself and looking at the various different adventures that you can have, and it's so easy to get into as well. And that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed with these simpler games. Now that they're not as complex as some of the games that we no doubt see on Slice and Dice, but as someone who never ever grew up with Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop, this was the easiest way that I found of getting into it. And ever since then, with video games, and you're talking Neverwinter Nights, and you're talking Baldur's Gate 3, and turn-based games and things like that, I've slowly been looking at more and more tabletop RPGs. And I've actually ordered myself, I think it was Favre that had it, I've actually ordered myself one of the ones that Favre presented. So he presented The Thing, the Expedition tabletop RPG, which is currently on order. And I'm looking at how much more I can expand, obviously, my knowledge with what's out there, whether it's through stuff directly through Goat, whether it's stuff directly through the likes of Tiny D10, with Dan's stuff that Dan's producing, and just having those opportunities to expose myself to more that's out there. I've been very shut off in terms of exposure, and these streams, which are absolutely fantastic to me, and I try and jump into these streams as much as I can do, have really expanded that kind of like knowledge base and that thirst for more tabletop stuff. So from myself and across to Goat, all of these opportunities I thank Goat personally for. But yeah, enough. I think Goat's trying to share a screen, so let me just shrink myself down and let's
That's all
bring
right.
up.
Goat was failing miserably. So
Yeah, it's all right.
this is like the first edition,
Yes.
like way back in the day. I just thought it might be interesting to kind of compare the two artwork, and I was trying to zoom in on the minis because the minis are so different. I think a lot of the original minis were the more metal ones.
Yeah, so a lot of the original minis were all metal. Most of the parts were all metal. So certainly the first edition was certainly all metal. And the other thing that we could do as well, we could paint them very easily. Because I still remember when my brother was painting his Space Marines, I was painting all of my characters as well. I mean, this game is 20, 30 years old now at this point. But it's still going. It's still active in development. Obviously, Avalon Hill produced this latest expansion to go with the rest. And the artwork, I would say the artwork hasn't faltered. It remains just as good as it was when I first played Hero Quest. And obviously, as soon as I saw this expansion, I was like, yeah, I've got to get it. Now,
Yeah. It it
the
it
yeah, go
went
for
out
it.
of it went out of print for a while. Um and became quite sought after. And I think when the makers realized it was going for like $1,000 on eBay, they were like, "Oh, we should probably." Oops.
Bring it back.
Uh oh.
Yeah, are you all right?
Am I? Did my thing go funky?
I don't know. I think,
There we go. All
yeah, I
right.
think the
There we go.
audio's coming in and out.
Well, when for some reason, every so often when I share my screen now, it will try and bring up the shared screen that no longer exists instead
Yeah,
of me.
yeah,
Uh, it's been a very strange thing. But anyway, I think the makers decided that when they saw things going for $1,000 a pop, they were like, "Oh, I guess this was really popular. Maybe we should make this again."
yeah.
And so they've started producing it again, which has made many people I know very, very happy.
Yeah, and certainly this latest expand, or certainly the Jungles of Delphrak, has been widely praised as an expansion, um, both for the depth, the new mechanics that it's brought. The community have really gravitated towards it, and especially bringing in the animal companions, which is a first for the series, and just harks back to a lot of parallels with World of Warcraft, where I could be a hunter within World of Warcraft and I could have various different beasts under my control. To bring that into Hero Quest, which has always been very much a World of Warcraft style adventure from the get go. And obviously, I've got love for the RPGs anyway. For the and the MMO RPGs, I play World of Warcraft weekly. I play Final Fantasy 14 weekly. And to be able to just touch some of these things in a way that makes it just more real and just far more exciting. And certainly that's what I wanted to bring to the show today, just to share this. And certainly, if anyone's looking for certainly games for, say, yourself, your kids, ages 10, 14 to 15, you'll all get a kick out of it. Great to sit down, spend some time on a Sunday afternoon just to have some good adventures. I would solely recommend Hero Quest and certainly this expansion by far.
Yeah, it's a great piece of history. I mean, it's kind of one of the first points where board games and role playing and tabletop wargaming kind of all began to mesh into the lines began to blur. So it's great. I do just want to very quickly, we've got a whole bunch more people that have been jumping in. Ms. Sparkles, welcome. I have to actually go back through the list because they've been coming in.
Thick and fast.
Yeah, while you were talking, you attract all the folks.
Nah,
Yarn.
it's the other guests. I just
Well,
turn
no,
up.
you certainly had my attention there. I've had a friend who's been trying to get me to Hero Quest for a couple of years now, and it's definitely enticing. It looks like a lot of fun, but that recent expansion that you pulled up there, it's very much up my alley.
Yeah.
So Natty is here. Welcome. The Yarn Witch is here.
Johnny.
Yet another person who's been online almost all day today. Wednesday is her busy day. I'm very pleased she was able to swing by after many hours of being on a computer. Um, the I'm gonna mangle this. The Divistator.
Devastator.
Oh, there we go. Just spelled
Yeah.
strangely.
Devastator. Yeah.
And Greg, who is still awake. Tommy, how did you pull that one off?
I have no idea, but what's even funnier is there's a very dear chappie in your chat as well, Vice Baby.
Yes, I just saw that.
Yeah.
I think we have a new addition. One of us.
I hope you're doing. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well, brother. Obviously, most of us knew his dad. So if you haven't checked out Vice Baby's channel, definitely check it out, guys.
Yes, awesome. And at Galadorn the second.
Yep, Galadorn.
So Greg says you kept him up after his bedtime.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. Normally, so for obviously our panel chums, so Greg is usually a panelist on my Hump Day Chinwag, and usually dead on the dot of 2300 UK time, he's like, "No, that's it. I'm too old." Because bless him, he thought he was 54 his last birthday, when in fact he actually turned out to be 56. He loses track of time, but the poor bastard, he just gets to 2300. That's it. He's bedtime. It's like, nope, time for bed, and he's actually up 30 minutes past the hour. I'm surprised, Greg. I'm surprised. He's probably dribbling
Greg,
into his pillow.
he made it. He made it through my show in great form. So as much as we love to tease him, he takes it in very good humor, and I really appreciate that. Um, but I do have to say, the first chinwag I ever watched, he fell asleep on the stream.
Yeah.
Hey, having a regular bedtime is a healthy habit. Good for Greg.
Yep. Especially for old people.
Yeah, I feel it.
Just a quick reminder, friend of the channel, Jacob Ironsides, he is still working on his GoFundMe. He and his parents need to relocate.
Yep.
There are some medical issues which make that difficult, both in finding a place and in actually getting the moving done. So we are attempting to get some funds together to help them ease that a little bit, so they can hire some help and get a truck and all that good sort of stuff. Having personally moved at this point in my life 25 times, I can assure you that moving absolutely sucks, and that's when you do have people and friends with strong backs and trucks. So, and no medical issues and no concerns about, what type of apartment you get.
Yep.
So please, 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 if you have a couple of dollars and have not donated yet, even, $5 helps out. And if you have already donated, please share generously so that other people can see the community movement we have going. And now that I have all of it's all the tea on a Wednesday night.
Yep. It is. He's the stereotypical old man. One, he gets tired when it gets past 8 o'clock at night, and two, if he drinks too much tea, he just needs to have an old man's wee every 5 minutes. He is the stereotypical old dude. Bless him. During the war, he says quite often.
And nodding off in his chair.
Yes.
But he is such a good sport about all of the ribbing we give him. So,
Yeah.
Aaron, why don't you continue and tell us about Tiny D10?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just give you kind of a quick overview. It's funny because I've had a few conversations in the past about Tiny D10, and I always think like, well, how am I going to fill any amount of time with it? Really, you could read the book in 20 minutes. So it's a very kind of compact volume. Right now, like I said, Tiny D10 is itself. It's just a system. It's a genre agnostic system that you could use to create any genre, any setting, any kind of supplementary content for very easily. It's designed to be extensible. It's designed to be adaptable and flexible. But where I get the most use out of it is with the fantasy setting. So I've got actually a print book, if I can reach it here without unplugging myself. So I've got these kind of print copies here. They've got three individual books in them. The first one is the core rules. The second one is a monster manual, and
Aaron,
then yes.
can you hold that up again? I didn't have you blown up, so.
Yeah. So, like I said, 3 books. We've got the core rules, we've got a monster manual, and then we've got a short adventure in the back, kind of a maybe a stereotypical Lovecraftian, spooky lighthouse adventure. That's been kind of my introductory adventure for everybody that I've had play the system with me over the 10 years that I've been working on it. That's the adventure I've had newcomers play. So it's gotten the most mileage, and I've spent the most time kind of tweaking it. I'm very very happy with pretty much everywhere I sit. I've gotten a lot of use out of it just personally between me and my children. but I've had, neighbors and friends and family members, all sit down at the table and play it with us. So we've gotten a lot of good fellowship out of it. And that's kind of, what I'm hoping to do in sharing it just in general with people. I forget to mention this all the time, but it's free. Everything's free. The full PDF can be found on the website, and there's some other supplementary content there as well. And then for a print copy of the book, it's just it's available for sale at cost. Um, yes, this is my office. It's actually just a closet, but it's pretty cozy, except for in the evenings when the sun comes just beating through this window here. It warms up a little bit, but it does the trick. But yeah, so like I said, it's totally free. And if you want to buy a print copy of it, you can buy it at the print on demand site Lulu, and it's being sold at print cost. So as cheap as you could possibly make it for the cost of the paper that they printed on, and all the other services there. So yeah, like I said, it's really just about getting it out there. More recently, and this is kind of the first really new thing that I've done with the system in a few years, honestly. I worked with Mr. Big, who I'm sure some of your audience knows, and he's kind of like a mafia scholar, I guess, if you will. Spends a lot of time researching the mafia and then writing very interesting books about it that he's shared a few with me, and got a lot of very interesting information out of it. Um, but yeah, so I worked with him to create a mafia setting for the Tiny D10 system. It's called the Syndicate, and it's also available over on Mr. Big's website, as well as the publisher Edgeweaver Publishing. It's also available for free on the website because everything with the Tiny D10 system is free. So any supplements it uses. A share alike license that basically states that it's free, can be remixed, transformed, and even for profit, but that everything that is created off of the system has to adhere to the original licensing. So like I said, I got a copy of the Syndicate on the website up for people to take a look at and kind of, get an idea of how it works, how it plays. The idea is that it plays exactly like a mafia movie. So I had never like actually really got into, mafia movies or books or anything like that. And, when Mr. Big first approached me with the idea, I was like, I don't know, give me some movies to watch and I'll see what I think. So I watched a few movies, St. Valentine's Day Massacre, obviously The Godfather, and I was totally taken. So read some of his books, did a lot more research, and was just, yeah, like I said, very kind of sucked into this underworld. So I'm very happy with how the rules turned out. I'm in the process of creating kind of like I guess expanding on the setting again. The setting is Mr. Big's original idea, Nova City, 1950s, 1960s Las Vegas style city that's just riddled with crime and various crime factions. So I'm kind of fleshing that city out to kind of enable sandbox play, so people could just pick it up and follow an interesting hook in this kind of living city. And in addition to that, they're, like I said, the natural factions. You've got the Chinese triads, you've got the Italian mafia, you've got the Irish mob, and then you've got the Russian bratva, the Russian mafia as well. And initially when I put this game together, I thought, we'll just kind of play it, with the conventional tabletop role playing game approach of, everybody's, in a group, they're all friends, they're all working toward a common goal. But then I realized, well, this would be a great setting to introduce kind of, player versus player action, some kind of, competitive play, especially because, like I said, you can pick, one of, four, widely known crime groups. So that's kind of what I'm working towards in the Nova City supplement is introducing options for faction competitions, kind of competitive play. And like I said, the Syndicate's free, Tiny D10 is free, Fantasy Core is free. It's just something that I want to get out and give people as many opportunities to connect with their friends and family.
That sounds awesome. Do we have any questions from the chat? There have been tons of very enthusiastic comments.
I did see somebody say do a dinosaur setting. I'm working on that right now. It's over on the website. It's called the Island of the Ape Men. Um, same guy, different question. No, but I mean, who knows what's under the city? I'm a firm believer that there's always something under everything. So
So what you're saying is that instead of there being giant alligators in the sewers, they're really small dinosaurs just left behind.
Exactly. What's the difference?
I
So
was
Rachel, I'm sorry, go ahead.
sorry, goats. So I think I picked up on this correctly. This has been in the making for 10 years.
It has been, yeah, yeah. So I've been. It's
Wow.
probably I keep saying 10 years because I don't want to be two more years older, but it's actually closer to 12. And yeah, it's just something, right from the very beginning when I picked it up with my kids. Like I said, they were 3 and 5 at the time, and I figured, we're just doing make believe. We've got some kind of rules to keep it consistent, to make sure that arbitrary things don't happen, generally. And so surely it's something that little kids can play. If you can talk, you can play. So I just kind of built it from the ground up of like, well, we're just gonna sit here and kind of collectively tell a story, and then anytime there's conflict, well then your conflict resolution mechanism comes in. That's the die, and you roll a die. If you get over this number, you win, or you succeed. If you get under that number, you fail. And then as their interest developed, and as we kind of wanted to better replicate fate, chance, destiny,
Yeah.
skill, kind of rules emerged naturally as we moved along. And yeah, it just kind of it went that way for probably 5 or 6 years. And then I got a really solid rule set that I thought that we could just start playing rather than play testing. And yeah, so it's been in its current shape for probably about the past 6 years.
That's amazing. That's amazing. No, well done. Well done.
Thank you, thank
I've
you.
already ordered my paperback copy. As soon as I found it,
Awesome.
I was like, that bang, got it.
Awesome.
And somebody said that they have a 5 and a 4-year-old, so they consider this really perfect.
Great.
Um,
Yeah. And like I said, I've had this system for 6 years now. I've had more children since, so it's been in the exact same state that it is. Like I said, it's only 10 pages long, and 2 of those pages are dedicated to character creation. 7 of those pages or so, 6 or 7 of them are devoted to just the game rules, and then there's a special little section for the game master. But I've played this very rule set with, let me do the math here, with a 4-year-old. So and on up there. So yeah, very easy for kids to grasp. I think there's a lot of intuitive things that just make sense. I kind of tell people who don't play role playing games. I tell them, well, that's kind of how I built this. I built the game to play like how people think role playing games play. When they see them on TV, in movies, it's often it looks different than when people are actually sitting down and playing the rules. So yeah, that was kind of my idea is, give people something they could just pick up and immediately play, and it would feel like, their concept of tabletop role playing.
yeah, and you say it's, what'd you say, 8 or 10 pages?
Yeah,
Uh,
10 pages.
the people that tell me they have developed a rules light system and then they give me a 200-page book.
Right. Well, and I've seen that myself, and a lot of them, they are really rules light. They are very elegant, but they pack a lot of content in there. And that's something that I paid attention to myself is, I try to put the bare minimum content in there to build a feasible game, and build it in such a way that people could very easily jump off it, that people could grasp these concepts and build it into their own ideas about fantasy, their own ideas about, just gameplay, traditional, conventional, experimental, and really just make it something that people could take in any direction with very little effort.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm old. My
Me too.
first introductions to role playing involved a 20-page, you know, paper booklet that would fall apart on you in no time because and if you wanted additional information, you just went out and got additional books, but
Right.
you didn't need them.
Hmm.
It used to be even before, the evil days of Hasbro. Uh when they did, instead of doing a monsters manual, they would give you a binder that had like a certain number of common monsters,
Hmm.
and then you could buy individual pages for the monsters you were actually going to use.
Oh, interesting.
You could just print them off and like put them in the binder in whatever order you wanted. And it's like cable television shows. They force you to buy a package of 100 television stations. You only want like 10 of them.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a really neat idea. I'd love to see that approach come back.
Um, but Yeah, so I really like this idea of, and it's great that you're doing it and there are other companies doing it, coming back to these just quick, fast, somebody didn't show up for the regular game, we need a one shot that everyone can learn immediately,
Hmm.
or we're, you know, going camping and we need something quick to do with the kids on the day it
Yep,
rains.
totally.
Yep.
So these are wonderful, wonderful games like that. Um, Yeah, Blaze said some people claim that Pathfinder 2e and GURPS are rules light. No, no, they're not.
I've heard that claim myself.
I mean, there are crunchier games, but they
Mhm.
are
Oh,
only
yeah,
rules light if you're stacking them next to Palladian.
yeah, it's
Right.
all relative.
Yes, it's all
So
relative. Although I think this is gonna be an interesting episode because the juxtaposition between Aaron's game and my game. If his game is Tiny D10, Omega Horizon could be called Humongous D6. So
Massive
I
That
think
D6.
it's going to
that's
be an
perfect
interesting
symmetry.
conversation to show the wide breadth of role playing
Yep,
games and
yep,
what you can
perfect
get.
symmetry.
that actually, this actually works out perfectly because that's exactly what I have been trying to do is have this wide range of, one person talks about an older board game that they really love, one person talks about, something they've created that's quick and light, one person talks about something that they created or loved that's, denser. The part of this whole show was just to get people away from this idea that 5e or Games Workshop are the only game companies in existence,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
everything you create has to be based. The number of people who are like, well, I created this thing and here's how it's like 5e.
Right.
I'm
Mhm.
like, if I wanted something that was like 5e, I would go buy 5e, and I didn't do that. So
Yeah. I,
um
I often find myself talking about how my game is different from D&D. I mean, the reality is Dungeons and Dragons has made the hobby accessible for a lot of people because of the money that they have behind them and their reach. And so it at least does, I think, provide some common touchstones you can talk to in relation to where you're coming from a different angle. But it is unfortunate that it does create this idea that gaming is a monolith, which it is not. There's a lot of different games and different complexities, and they appeal for not just different people, but for people in different situations. Again, like you said, let's say you have a situation where someone doesn't show up for your normal game, which may be a crunchier game, and you're craving something light and quick that you can just use as a pickup game. So I think it's like having different tools in your toolbox. You want to have different tools for different
Yep.
situations and different
yeah.
groups.
The other thing, though, is that so the real life fake wizard has been on here a couple of times, and one of those times he was talking about marketing games because he is a market guy in real life, as opposed to this stream, which is absolutely not real life. Um, and one of the things he said is that the untapped audience that a lot of game creators are not going after are the people not playing games. And when you start off by saying, here's how my game is like 5e, you come across, you give the opinion, I have to have played 5e in order to try this game. And so you have literally millions of people in the world that have never picked up a role playing game that think now that they have to go out and spend $150 on 5e books in order to understand your game.
It's true. It's true. I was listening to another podcast recently where they talk about the creator of Fiasco was saying that he marketed his game more like a card game when really it plays like a tabletop role playing game for the purpose of making it more accessible to an audience who were perhaps intimidated by role playing games. And then once they play Fiasco, it's like a gateway drug where immediately
Yep.
someone points out, this is basically a tabletop role playing game. And then they quickly are hooked and go out and buy a dozen different ttrpgs.
So what I find interesting is just before you use the word hooks, Critter brought up my game as like heroin.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then Hunter is on kind of the same place I am. Checks out new game. Oh, it's like 5e. Deletes file. I don't. If it's like 5e, I don't. But there have been several Kickstarters I've looked at and gone, oh, this is really cool. Oh, I have to have all the 5e books in order to play it. Sorry, I'm out.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah. So on to the what did you call it? The gigantic
The humongous D6 game, yeah.
yeah,
The
the
So
humongous
humongous
D6 game.
D6.
this
Yeah.
this is Omega Horizon. This is our core rule book, which it is a very big book. It clocks in at 544 pages, but it really is sort of multiple books in one. If you want to compare it to 5e, how it's different, right? I found one of the biggest barriers of entry to people who really want to get into role playing games, and all they really know is Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, is your barrier of entry is you need to buy 3 books, right? You need to get your player's handbook, you need to get your game master's guide, you need to get your monster manual. And so what we did was we put everything in one, right? For this retails for $60, which again, the D&D books, you're looking at probably $120 to $150 to get into that game. This $60 is all you'll ever need. It has all the rules, it has deep lore, a lot of character options. The actual game setting, it is an original science fiction setting. I call it space punk. It's got elements of cyberpunk, including a digital world of cyberspace you can interact with. It's got elements of space western, like Firefly. It's got elements of space opera. So it's a little bit of everything. I call it my love letter to science fiction, but we spent a lot of time bringing a lot of information and being very
That's cool.
thoughtful about
Mhm.
playable species. And, again, my scientific background, I agonize over things like culture and child rearing and native environments and how that affects physiology and evolution and things. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot of playable species. There's a lot of playable careers to choose from, each of which has a unique career ability that is impactful to gameplay, but does not restrict you in a way that like a class-based system in D&D does. So to use a comparison, in Dungeons and Dragons, let's say you play as a cleric, you know exactly what you're going to get at every level from level 1 to level 20. As you go, you earn your experience and you hit these milestone levels. Omega Horizon uses a point-buy system where you start with 300 points to spend on whatever you want. You increase different skills based on what you want to be able to do. You increase different traits, completely separate from whatever career you've chosen. So if you want to be a pilot who's also very social, or if you want to be a pilot who's also a scientist, or who's a soldier, it's very easy for you to customize your character to be exactly what your fiction for your character will be. And then as you earn experience, that experience is just more points that you could just keep spending as you go at whatever rate you want to increase your character stats essentially through the game. And we'll talk a little bit more about mechanics in a minute, but one of the big things I want to highlight is I really love sci-fi. I've always loved sci-fi. And one of the things that I love most about science fiction is the fact that it explores deep themes and sort of represents a mirror to our world. And so I know, Eclectic, you mentioned that you like more thoughtful games, thought-provoking games that you can really sort of get into character development and stuff. And so we really lean into those themes throughout the game and the factions and the universe. We explore themes like the nature of humanity, especially when it comes to transhumanism and incorporating technology into your bodies, or modifying your genetic code. At what point do you stop being human? And where some cyberpunk games put a hard number on that and say, well, every piece of tech you incorporate has a point value. When you hit a certain point value, you lose control of your character, you become a machine. I purposefully avoided taking that hard stance. I want that to be an open conversation of, is there a limit? Is there a difference, right? Is technology just an outgrowth of humanity, to the point where one of the species you can play as are androids, and you can either be an android that was manufactured, or you can be an android who had a human consciousness uploaded into it, a la Ghost in the Shell, right? And is that not a person anymore? It's an interesting thing to explore, I think.
Okay, so Tomby was sold when you got to the Firefly. I was sold when you got to the Ghost in the Shell.
There you go.
Honestly, as soon as I heard Cyberpunk and Firefly in the same sentence, that was it. I was straight to the website. I've already got it.
Is it? But it. I mean, I was kind of making a joke, but are you familiar with Ghost in the Shell?
Yes.
Have you seen it? The real one, not the terrible remake. But this sounds very much that same kind of question, like, at what point is your humanity, not your humanity anymore?
Absolutely. And that's just one small part of the game. I mean, we also, one of the big themes I explore a lot is the idea of the individual versus the collective, right? Which I think is very pertinent in the world we live in today. We are separated very often by ideology and factions and religions. And there's this idea of how the individual relates to whatever groups they're part of, where the self disappears into the collective, and how individual people, at least my thesis, individual people have a great propensity for good, right? To be heroes, to be good people, to rise to the occasion. But any group sufficiently large sort of crumbles under its own weight and defaults to greed and self-perpetualization and othering of other groups. And so there are four major factions in the game, and all of them to some degree or another have this sort of dark pall to them, with the best of intentions, right? The Centennium Empire are religious zealots who really believe they're protecting the world from this group of insect-like aliens called the Rogosian Swarm. It sort of smacks of Starship Troopers, right? But they keel towards fascism, right? They're very rigid in their rules. There's mandatory military service, all these things, right? You've got the Yamato Empire, which is very late stage hyper-capitalism. They believe that anyone should be able to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and rise through the economic ranks. But the divide between the haves and the have-nots is so monumental a valley that it'll never be scaled. And those who have money and corporations basically are not accountable to any laws, right? And so there's this idea that even though they come from a place that is, most people would agree, fundamentally good, right? In the case of the Centennium Empire, it's this idea of protecting humanity from this hive mind of vicious insects that want to devour everything they come across. Because they get sufficiently large and saddled by their own bureaucracy, they ultimately become villains in their own right. But the individual people within those empires, right, the soldiers who are fighting those bugs, they believe in the fight, right? They really are going out risking their lives, trying to protect people who may not even like them, who may not even want them there, right? And so exploring that divide between the individual and the collective, I think, is really interesting. And again, I think it's really sort of poignant for today's age and what we're dealing with in modern society.
So I did want to say, Greg said he was sold when he saw the book Thickness, spelled Thickck. Yeah. So just so that no one, feels intimidated by the size of his game, size only matters if you want to beat someone to death with that book.
Yeah. Yes. I call it my burglar bonker trademark. Yeah. Well, and the truth is, and I feel sort of sheepish saying it because we just said anyone who says that this book or that book is simple. The reality is, I think the game mechanics are actually fairly straightforward for Omega Horizon. It uses a new system that we created, inspired by a lot of different systems, because I've played, you can see my bookshelf of shame in the background, all the many tabletop role-playing games I've played.
I see some of the shelves just ready to
bowing under the weight, crying in the background, absolutely. But we call it the PGRS system because we're actually going to be publishing a few games using this system. It's a 6-sided dice roll and keep system. So you roll multiple 6-sided dice. You get to keep some of them to add together for your result. The amount of dice you roll is based on a skill group. The amount of dice you keep is an associated trait. So let's say you wanted to scale a tall chain link fence. That would be a climb skill roll, which keys off your strength trait. If you had 6 ranks in athletics and 4 levels in strength, you would roll 6 dice and keep the 4 highest. And that's basically all you need to know to play the game, right? Mm-hmm. Everything else, it breaks down the many different ways you can do that. It breaks down our action point system. So again, talking about how it's different than D&D. D&D uses what we call a fixed action system, which is that you get a move action, a standard action, and a bonus action every round. And that's all you get, and you use it or you lose it. In Omega Horizon, we use an action point economy, which means you get a certain amount of action points, which you can actually increase with certain advantages and things. And then you can choose how you use that, to move, to use skills, to make attacks, whatever you want to do in a turn. And so, I always laugh when I play D&D, which again was my first game. I'm not knocking D&D at all. It fills a specific role. I was the forever barbarian, and I'm so sad because I use my move action to get into combat, and then I hit the thing, and then every turn thereafter, I never move again because I'm the frontline fighter. So I lose my move action every turn. I just make my attack every turn, and that's all I get to do. In Omega Horizon, I would use a move action to get into combat on my first round, make my attack. And then on subsequent turns, I could either make additional attacks or I could make stronger attacks. There are specific different attack actions you can take that'll increase your damage, allow you to ignore some armor, things like that, right? And so it gives you a lot of strategic customization to your turns that it doesn't feel monotonous. It doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing every turn. And that's sort of like our core philosophy is about really letting you dig in as deep as you want to get and make the game what you want it to be for you and for your idea of your character.
Okay, what else do we have for questions? Hello to Dadman Walking. Sorry you can't stick around, but I hope that you have a wonderful evening.
I saw Jod said it's like L5R. Yes, L5R is one of the games on my shelf. That is a D10 roll and keep system, and they also use a somewhat similar nested skill tree system that we've incorporated, where you have skill groups that have individual skills under them. So, for example, climb is a skill for us under the athletics skill group. Other skills in that skill groups would be like swim and jump and things like that. And the reason we nested it like that is because it actually allows you to decide if you want to build wide or deep. So, for example, one thing I always laughed at in again, D&D or other games, many games do it this way. It's like, okay, so if I'm just athletic, it means I'm good at everything. I don't know that many people that are like, yes, I'm a gifted climber and a swimmer and an acrobat, right? It's like usually I'm one of those things, maybe really good, or I have a general level of athleticism and then maybe I'm better at one of those things. So it allows you, if you want to just build into your athleticism or say, you know, I'm not that athletic, but I grew up in the mountains and I'm really good at climbing. And that would cost you less points to just be good at one thing in the skill group as opposed to improving your skill group as a whole.
So, what if your thing is, I don't know, I'm really good at carrying heavy things, but I'm actively afraid of heights?
Yeah, so again, that's actually really easy. So you would invest in your strength trait to represent raw physical ability, but not put into athletics. So maybe you don't have good balance. You're clumsy, even though you're strong. That is absolutely something you can replicate in the system.
I was sort of thinking about, like, do you actually get, I mean, so my mother, for instance, is not clumsy and is, for her age, incredibly physically fit, but is terrified of heights. And therefore, like, she can't watch television commercials that are filmed from high places. um,
Um,
so
yeah, that's an
is there a disadvantage system
there
in things like
is.
that, or?
There is a disadvantage system. So disadvantages are things that you can take at character creation or afterwards that instead of costing you character points to buy, they give you additional character points to spend. The philosophy being you've had to adapt to a disadvantage, which has given you other benefits, right? So in this case, let's say you took a disadvantage, which is fear of heights, that would carry some sort of penalty when you're doing things at height or near ledges or things like that. Maybe because of that, you have gotten much better at balancing. So you spend those extra points to get better at balancing because you're so terrified of heights, as just one example.
Okay. This confused me for a second until he clarified. Do you have a ship combat mechanic in the game?
We do. We have an entire chapter dedicated to starships, and I can show you some of the art from some of the ships. Not only do we have a starship combat system and go into lots of different ships, we also have a section to easily design new starships. So again, I talked about the fact that this book should be all you need to play the game. I also wanted to make sure that people who were newer to role-playing games would be able to pick this up and have it be accessible. So one of the things we do is we really hold your hand as far as like what it means to be a game master, what kind of skills you need to develop, and how you can make the game your own. So we talk about how to design custom careers for players. We talk about how to design new creatures, how to design new starships, how to design new antagonists, and how to balance encounters well, which that's something I feel like many games have missed the mark on over the years, that it's very hard to balance games. D&D was especially guilty of this, I think, that it's like if you had 3 or 4 players and you just ran things exactly as the book listed them, you were okay. And the second you got to like 5, 6 players, the whole system fell apart. And there really wasn't good information on how to remedy that situation. We built what we call our CCR system, our challenge code rating system, to really be scalable. And we talk about niche cases of, let's say you have a really big group. Let's say you're running at a convention, you got 10 players. We talk about how you can handle that in a way that doesn't break the game mechanics. And with starships in particular, starship combat, one thing that I've always sort of struggled with is when you play on multi-crew starships, let's say you're playing Star Trek Adventures, it often feels like the person at the helm has a lot to do, and the person at the tactical console has a lot to do, and everyone else kind of twiddles their thumbs until things break and maybe they can fix them. And so we put in a lot of actions that you can take to do things like rerouting a ship's power has meaningful impacts. That's something a co-pilot can do. Multiple weapon platforms above starships, so multiple people can be attacking from the starship at a given turn. People can be jamming other ships. People can be locking onto targets. There's a lot of things that you can do so that if you have a group of 5 people aboard, let's say a freighter, for the people who like Star Wars, let's say you're all on the Millennium Falcon, right? There's stuff that everybody can do in combat to feel impactful and participate.
Somebody was saying earlier that now they want to shop combat. They want a
Shop
shop
combat.
combat system.
I like it. I like it.
I mean, look at all those movies where you have somebody in a small enclosed space like a bar or a mechanic shop, or you got to be able to maneuver and adapt. And
Absolutely. That's where our cover rules come into play.
that's very different combat from like being out on a field with
Absolutely.
horses or ships or wide open
And
spaces.
there's always traders about, isn't there? There's always traders.
All right, what else do we have for questions? Hello, Abe. Welcome. Any other questions?
I just mentioned to Greg that I've ordered both of these books, and I feel like we're going to have to set up some form of regular gaming session. Greg lives on the other side of the country, so logistically might be a struggle, but by the miracle of technology, I'm sure we can accomplish something.
I was
No
just
doubt.
going to say, there's my question. Are either of these ever going to be available to be able to play on, let's say, Foundry? Or playable in some way, shape, or form on Foundry?
Yes, we are exploring that right now. We're working on a one-shot adventure that I'm hoping will be out next year. Really aiming for convention play, because that's one of the biggest feedback I've gotten at conventions is people saying, hey, do you have something that we could just run, it's relatively like a 2-hour quick run game. And as we look to put that out, we're going to look to see if we can partner with sites like Roll20 or other platforms like that, so that we can incorporate maps and tokens and things like that for people to make it a little easier for online play. Having said that, Omega Horizon, I really designed it to play well Theater of the Mind. So you do not need miniatures, you do not need tokens, you do not need maps. The game works very well Theater of the Mind. So if you just want to play over Discord or Zoom or whatever you're playing with, it's actually really easy to do that. The system lends itself more towards target management than square management, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So it's less about moving from one individual square to another and more about paying attention to different targets and putting conditions on different targets.
Yeah. I like Foundry mainly because they have the dice that you roll and everyone can see what the dice rolls actually are.
Mhm.
Not that any gamer ever would, fudge their dice rolls, but
Well, honestly, even Discord, there's a lot of free plugins for Discord that
Yeah.
allow you to do a command like a !R and whatever dice you want to roll, and it'll roll it.
yeah. I have never been a big fan of running games online. But during COVID, it kind of became a thing. And I tried Roll20 for a while, and it was so buggy.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
just couldn't. And then my brother, who lives on the opposite side of our country, and who I never get to interact with except at Christmas time and if we're gaming, convinced me to try Foundry, and so we now get together once a month and do a little short game. And Foundry has been amazingly good for a lot of things, just because it's really good for theater of the mind, as well as what happened with Roll20 was if you have the very specific thing it wants, it's fine. But if you want to
Yeah.
kind of jury rig a system it doesn't have and you just want to put in a map and some character sheets, it is not great.
Yeah,
That is
it's not
my
very
experience.
agile for it, is it?
Whereas Foundry, you can just set up a blank world and be like, here you go.
Yeah.
But it is nice having, character sheets that are... Speaking of which, do you have a visual of the character? Actually, both of you, do you have visuals of the character sheets for your
We do.
games?
I wish I'd thought to print that out. I do have it up on the website. One of my wonderful mutuals over on Twitter designed a very beautiful character sheet for Tiny D10. So there's, the simple character sheet that comes with the system. And then there's this very nice, hand-drawn custom artist made character sheet that's, like I said, very, very handsome. So that's over on the website. I don't have a printed out copy here with me.
So
Hey, sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, if you have a link while Dan is doing his thing, I can try and bring it up and share
Yeah,
screen.
it's just on the downloads page. So td10.org/downloads.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, so we have two actually different character sheets. We have a single page character sheet, just which is easier for people to keep track of their various character traits and whatnot. And then we have a 3-page sheet, which is mostly for additional information if you want to write out things for yourself so you don't need to reference the book. But here's an example of a pre-made character with the 1-page character sheet. And so it lists your various, where's my finger, traits here, your skill ranks here, specific skill modifiers, advantages, and then down here you've got things like weapons and equipment and things. So this is the 1-page character sheet. This is actually a pre-made character. There are 11 pre-made characters you can download for free on DriveThruRPG. If you just search Paleo Gaming or Omega Horizon, you can get the book there as well. But we have blank 1-page character sheets, blank 3-page character sheets, and the 11 pre-made characters all as free downloads for people who want to get into the game.
Hey, there it is.
Tomby got to it faster than I did.
Yeah, so like I said, this is a very, very elegant sheet that one of my mutuals made, Jen's. Really happy with how this turned out. I think it, kind of really reflects, I don't know, maybe that kind of whimsical thing that I'm going for with a system that's, geared primarily towards, just traditional archetypal heroism. But yeah, like I said, I think it really captures the spirit, and that's that. Otherwise, I've been running with a very simplified one that I made years ago. I'm not an artist. So, I just kind of threw something together that was functional and just been getting by with it for, all these years until this one. This one's only a few months old here.
Yeah, it really is. It's sometimes when people make artistic character sheets, they become kind of hard to read.
Right. They get a little busy. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously that would be totally contrary to the spirit of the system here. But he sat down and he just kind of studied everything. We had a few conversations, and I feel like he really just captured, just the spirit of the system. So, like I said, elegant. That's all I can say about it.
And lots of fill-in blocks, not a lot of writing. I'm a
Right.
big fan, as much as I like avoiding technology stuff when I'm running games, I am a
Mhm.
big fan of fillable character sheets
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I have never yet met a gamer that had decent handwriting, um, myself included. Uh, and so, having those sheets where you're either just fill in or you can type stuff in so that everybody can read it is really nice.
Yep, for sure.
But that's great. It's interesting. So I was talking earlier about the fact that the games I like to run and the games I like to play are very, very different. And I'm sitting here thinking this is another perfect example of the wide range, because Dan's is a game I would really like to run, and Aaron's is a game I would really like to play. I like to run crunchy stuff and I like to play simple stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I will make 20 other people character sheets, but I don't want to take 10 minutes to make my own.
Yep. I understand it.
It's always like I say, it's like walking. The doctor tells me I need to walk more. I can walk the dog 5 miles, but I can't walk me 500 feet. Anything else from the chat, Tomby? Do you have questions for each other?
I mean, short of obviously the level of effort that's obviously been going into this is years, this is decades worth of work here that we're been certainly myself, the chat, Goat have been thrust into, and I'm just one of the comments I made earlier is that I'm just flabbergasted over the level of detail, the passion that people have for these things. I'm not a very imaginative person just by nature. I'm a software developer and coder, so I think everything is logic.
That's a
ones
different
and
kind of
zeros.
imagination, though.
Exactly. And I really struggle to kind of like jump to you guys' level of imagination to think of these vast different scenarios, vast different worlds, different situations we can be in. different ways of approaching problems, different ways of playing these systems. And I'm just absolutely flabbergasted by the level of one dedication that you're showing to what is essentially a passion, a love that you have for playing these things, but also that you are going down the lines of trying to make this accessible to everybody as well. And that's where, certainly from my perspective, I'm massively appreciative for everybody that Goat brings onto these streams, because I'm seeing things that I've missed over the course of the last 30, 40 years that I've never really had much exposure to. Now I'm seeing more and more exposure, which is why as soon as I saw both the Tiny D10 and I've seen the Omega, I'm like, both of these things are so accessible. Why not grab them, play them? I've got, and we were talking about kids earlier. I've got 12 grandkids, and
Awesome.
I can see me at Christmas, birthdays throughout the year when the kids come and visit, of running small little adventures with a lot of the grandkids, and most of them are from the ages of 4 up to 16. Some of the
Hmm.
older ones have kind of like move on with their interests. They're more interested in the
Right.
technology and boys and girls and all that good stuff. So they're out the window, push them out. But I've got this core group of 6 to 12-year-olds, which these things are just perfect for. And I could bring into their lives something that I missed through mine, which
Hmm.
is that spending time with your parents, spending time with your grandparents, having little mini adventures where they get to be the hero or they get to be the villain,
Yep.
really doesn't matter. But the world's their oyster, and what I see through these is the opportunity for them to spark that kind of level of interest and imagination in their lives. What can they create and things like that? So
Oh yeah, totally. Well, and you just mentioned it there as well. Playing games with family is so much fun. Like my core game group, like I said, I've played with friends, family, neighbors, but my core game group has always been, my boys. I've got 5 boys. 3 are old enough to play, 16, 14, and 10, and then my wife. So I've typically got 4 players at the table, and like I said, that's just been our core group for many, many years. But yeah, like you said, you're creating really good memories with very special people. That's the whole point of the game, right?
yeah,
There's also the fact that, there's the things that kids think are really cool.
Mhm.
And then they grow up and they hit like high school and like their early 20s and they realize that they've kind of outgrown that stuff and it's not really cool anymore. And then they get a little older and they've realized that no, they were right the first time. That stuff really was cool.
Yeah.
yeah,
And it seems like kids these days, that period is shorter.
yeah.
um,
It's heavily
Yeah,
compressed.
it doesn't take so long to come around.
so, even the grandkids that think that they are now, too old to play games with grandpa,
Mhm.
give it 5 years.
At most, yep.
And they're going to be like, "Hey, you remember that game we used to play? Could we do that again?"
Yeah. Yeah, Rachel in chat, 12 grandkids, that's wonderful. Yes, we've got a big family.
That's great.
We've got a big family.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Sounds
That's
like
kind
the
of
dog's going nuts downstairs. I might have to pop away in a second.
gotta go rat
Yeah,
chasing.
I gotta go find this rat and see how far it's gotten into the sofa, which is going to be an interesting struggle.
Well, Aaron, not a question, but a comment. I just want to give you props. I think you really nailed the core design principle of your game in accessibility and simplicity. Um, I find that I think intentionality in game design is probably the most important trait for a game developer, is to know what your game is and to help it become the best version of what you want it to be.
Yep.
Even those simple design choices like character sheets and form fillable bubbles and things, I think all of that lends to the game. And it's funny. I was listening to Matt Forbeck talk. Matt Forbeck is the creator of the Marvel Multiverse game, among many other things.
Okay.
And he said something that really resonated with me. He said 90% of game design is not about the things you put in the game, but the things you take out. Right? It's the things that hit the cutting room floor as
Yep,
you're going, because you go, is this really serving the game, or is it complexity for complexity's sake? It may
Right,
be
yeah.
cool, it may be interesting, but am I keeping it tight? Am I doing what the game is supposed to do? Does it still feel like the same game? And that's been the hardest thing for me. I mean, coming up with stuff. I mean, I'm always bouncing ideas, and again, I've been doing this for decades, so I have all these different systems in my head and things in my head. And I go, wouldn't it be cool if I incorporated this from this game or that from that game? But then it gets out of control, and you start to lose the thread a little bit. And so, I think that intentionality and that ability to cut, that ability to say, I can't do this, even though it's cool, is one of the most valuable tools for a game developer to have in their tool chest.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah, you're absolutely right. And just for my part, that book, it's an omnibus. It's a respectable omnibus. I love the size. And I don't actually, obviously, I think this is probably clear. I think complexity in games is great. It just kind of, it reflects the scale, with which you can, engage with a game, and the level of, realism or simulation or, complex mechanics, that there are. Uh, I love, like I said, I started with BX, and I've never really found, any of the major systems being too complex. At least,
Mhm.
not for, an older kid or an adult.
Right.
Yeah. I think complexity is great, especially when, like you said, it's done in a very intentional way. It's kind of crafted in a very kind of, consistent manner, both, mechanically and narratively. And it seems like, you've got some really neat mechanics. So I'm probably gonna have to look at this one myself.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to that intentional creation. So for anyone who doesn't know, when I am not being a goat on YouTube, um, I do freelance writing and freelance editing. And I have done editing for everything. My writing is pretty specific. I surprise, surprise, I write about goats. Um, but the editing, I've done everything from business newsletters to fiction novels to people's really terrible attempts at learning to write erotica, to role playing manuals. And the hardest thing, especially if it's a new author, is to get someone to cut things. And I say, like, they'll say, but that's like such a cool line. And I'll say, yes, it is a cool line, but it doesn't belong here. Keep a folder somewhere of all the cool lines, and the next thing you write, put it in that.
Hmm.
It's an amazing line. But just because it's an amazing line doesn't mean it fits in this spot. The rule of cool isn't cool if it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I think I drive people crazy because they have these big, long, poetic descriptions of things, and I'll be like, cut like over half of the adjectives because you're bogging down your message. Yes, it sounds pretty, but it doesn't get your point across. And that kind of intentional writing is very hard, especially for new authors. And I'm not being judgy about it because I write like you should see the cuts the editors make for me. Um, the fact that I use the word that about 100 times more than I should is my own failing, which is why I notice it when other people do it. Yes, Rachel, editing other people's erotica is incredibly awkward. It is it is more awkward when they obviously have never actually seen a member of the opposite sex naked.
Oh my goodness. Uh, I
Prophetic, I am a weregoat. I am a goat by internet and a human by real life.
I will say I totally understand where you're coming from. It's hard to get people to cut their writing. I think part of it is people feel emotionally connected to their writing, that it came from them, and they can be very protective of it. I also think there's an element of feeling like they wasted time, putting time and effort, because it can be hard sometimes. It can feel like you're trying to squeeze blood from a stone when you're trying to get words on a page sometime, and so you get 30 pages of writing, and then an editor comes in and goes, this chapter shouldn't be here. And then you cry for a while and make peace with it. But it also very often can serve the work in a great way. And I credit my editors immensely with this. The early drafts of Omega Horizon included a whole chapter on drugs, because that's a cyberpunk trope, and I felt like I needed to do it. So I am not someone who has ever used drugs. I said, okay, I'm going to go do research. I'm going to figure out the differences between stimulants and psychotropics and how they would affect your character. We'll put in all these rules for what happens when you use them. And then I gave it to my editor, and she says, so you're telling your players they should engage with drugs? I said, well, no. I put it in the universe because she said, no, you put a whole chapter in a core rulebook about drugs. You're telling your players it's important to engage with drugs. And I said, well, I didn't want to do that. She said, then you got to take it out. And she said, if you want, maybe a supplement book down the road, but a core rule book is about the core rules of the game. Anything in a core rule book, you're telling players this is important to the universe, and it's important for you to understand how to interact with it. So if it's not core to the game, save it for a supplement book down the line.
So wait a minute. Now I have a question about this one because Slay Industries is one of my favorite sci-fi games. There is in fact an entire section in the core rulebook about a certain type of player or character interacting with drugs, because that is literally what the character does.
Sure.
So there's a difference between saying your character should interact with drugs and saying the players should interact with drugs.
Correct. To specify, saying that player characters should be incentivized to interact with drugs because of the mechanical benefits and things like that. The reality is drugs are still part of the Omega Horizon universe. There are drug cartels. It's major. Again, it's part of that genre of science fiction that we tap into. And so I felt it was important to include that, but there's one thing to allude to it, to mention it, to discuss it in some of the factions. It's another thing to create an entire chapter dedicated to the mechanical effects on characters of using drugs. And again, that doesn't mean with the next, when we do a supplement book for Omega Horizon, just to add more stuff, we can't say for players and GMs who want to engage more with this topic, here is this whole topic, and you can really get into it. Again, if you want that crunch, you can dive into it and make your character have a vice, maybe a disadvantage that makes them more prone to using substances and what happens to them. But again, that intentionality, it's a core rule book. A core rule book should have core rules. This is a space opera type game. There needs to be starships. It's core to the game. It's an interstellar game. You need to be able to interact with them. Players will expect to interact with them. You need those core rules. Cyberspace is a core element of the game. This digital landscape affects some factions more than others, but it affects them in a really deep way and affects how societies evolved around them. You need rules for players to be able to engage with this medium. It's core to the game. There are other things that maybe aren't core to the game that are cool, that may, again, find their way into adventure modules or supplement books. But it's already 544 pages without those 30 pages of drugs I cut. So the reality is sometimes it's crazy to think that that's a streamlined game, but it is, right?
I believe it. Well, especially with an editor as discerning as that. Honestly, it's a really good point. And I mean, I guess, drugs are bad, even in imagination world. So
exactly. Unless they're important to your game, as the topic said. Some games, I mean, if that really is core to the game, right? Mm-hmm. If you're engaging with a world, like I could not imagine a Judge Dredd game without drugs. You need it. It is so core to the material. It is so core to how all of the characters in that world interact with each other. Mm-hmm. I would be disappointed to open that book and not see it. But in Omega Horizon, after a lot of soul searching, we figured, no, it's something that exists, but it's not core to it. We're much more focused on the incorporation of technology and transhumanism. We're much more concerned with individuality versus the collective. We're much more concerned with the consequences of life in space where everything is dark and dangerous and wants to kill you. The drugs take a back seat, and so they don't belong in a core rulebook.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because your editor's point was specifically about drugs, and it sounds like there was a little judgmentalism in there about you talking about drugs, but I think that is probably true of most anything when you're putting it in a game. So I have a no politics rule on this, so I am attempting to say this without breaking my own rule. One of my issues with Wizards of the Coast is their tendency to try and force things into the game that don't actually have anything to do with the game. And if they kept them into supplements, first of all, the books would be smaller and cheaper, and people would have more open room to play the way they want to play. And I think that is true of a lot of games that are coming out. And again, one of the reasons I like the fact that so many games are coming out is that that means we have choices and we can
Mhm.
play the games that, we align with and the games that we don't. Um, I just plain old want to play a game that doesn't have a whole lot of access stuff in it, and is open enough that I can put in stuff that I think my players will find interesting. Um, so it's kind of a so Natty asked, apparently this was a two-part question. One was if either of you have ever just been told to start over, like this section or this book is terrible, like just don't do it. And the other was they wanted to know they wanted to know if I have ever just told someone just start over. And the answer to my part is yes. The absolute worst of those erotica books that I was referring to, where someone obviously had never actually done the deed themselves. Uh, I got 2 pages in. I returned their money. I handed them back the book and said, "I can't do this. You're gonna have to go back and start again." So,
Well,
what do you?
I think that's okay, because being told to start over is better than being told to stop and never do
Just
it
stop.
again.
Yeah.
So you're not that bad. So starting over means, somebody thinks there's hope for you. But no. So for my experience, I've been easily my own worst critic. I think like most people who do anything are, and so I think it's probably properly ordered in that sense. But yeah, so I've been very critical of my work, over the many years, and then I've had a lot of time to look at what is ultimately a very small amount of words, and kind of like you guys were talking earlier. Telling people to cut things is hard, and it was hard for me in the beginning. But like I said, I've been kind of very very judicious about using as few words as possible to explain concepts in the simplest, most intuitive way. So no, and sometimes I do wish that somebody who like I really respect in game design would like look at it and be like, this is terrible, and they're like, oh, okay, I can go do something else. I go finish the chicken coop that I've been working on. Like I could go do something like that. But no, that's nobody has told me to start over or stop so far.
The person who has told me to start over the most has been me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
the first version of Omega Horizon was actually a D10 success failure system, similar to like a Chronicles of Darkness game, and I just found it wasn't working. Chronicles of Darkness is a game system I've loved, and World of Darkness before it. And so when I first set out to try to bring my universe to a game system, I used that as sort of a skeletal framework. And I just found it worked fine in ground combat, but when you bridge that divide between ground combat and space combat, the numbers just get too big and it kind of falls apart. It became way too swingy. It was not. There was no consistency to it, and so it was too hard to play. And so ultimately, I had scrapped it, switched to a D6 system, which allowed me to go for a target number based system and tighten the statistics on it. So I've told myself to start over a number of times. I haven't been told wholesale to start over by editors. I've been told to scrap certain species or careers or things like that. And in maybe 1 or 2 cases, I've actually heeded that advice and just said, you know what, you're right. This was a swing and a miss. In most cases, it's challenged me to go back to the drawing board and ask questions about, again, that intentionality. Why are they in here? Why are they important? How do I make them fill whatever I want them to fill better? And actually, one of my favorite species, and I feel like you're supposed to be the parent who doesn't have favorite children, but definitely I have favorites in my game. One of my favorite species are called the Yuanji. I will show you a quick illustration of them here. But the Yuanji, when I first designed them, they were kind of bland. They were just, I sort of based the design off Goro from Mortal Kombat. I just had this idea of this four-armed, cool, strong, brawly type character. So this is Yuanji. And for various reasons, the editor looked at it and said, I don't think they're working. I think you should just cut them. And I felt bad about cutting them. I'd already had some illustrations done. Again, you have that jealous sort of guarding of the idea. And I just thought they were really cool and I wanted to include them. And so I spent a lot of time saying, well, if I want them, I really need to make them shine and I need to make them feel unique. And so I ended up going back and sort of rehashing their whole origin to make it that they were genetically engineered by a higher species to be soldiers and eventually overthrew their creators, but they were designed not to be able to interbreed. So instead of interbreeding, they're all cloned. So they were basically engineered with archetypes that they would fulfill: a general, a pilot, whatever they were. And then they just keep living lives, 100-year cycle lives, where they get reincarnated via cloning. At the end, they come out as an adult. They have no childhoods. They come out with their pre-programmed memories into their role. They live 100 years, and then their genetics basically unspool at the end of the 100 years. They've got an expiration date, and they spool up again. And so they refer to themselves in the third person constantly because they feel like every life they have is just a chapter in a longer story, and so they don't fully own their life. It's just something they're participating in and adding to this mystique of whoever they are. And so they ended up becoming my favorite. I think they're one of the most compelling species. But they weren't when I pitched them. They were pretty bland. And by being challenged to throw them out and then having to go back and sort of defend their existence, certainly they came out one of the best species, I think. And they've been very popular among the players.
Did you ever watch the show Space Above and Beyond?
I didn't.
It was like a one-season 90s thing. It's in one of my underappreciated 90s series videos. There is a group in there called In Vitros.
Okay.
And the backstory is that there was a war, mankind and their technology rose up and yada, yada, yada. And the in vitros were created to help fight that war. And they are clones that are born full grown as adults and basically thrown into the battlefield as meat grinders. But the fact that they had no childhood means that they couldn't connect with their own humanity. So therefore, they had no desire to fight for a race that they didn't even feel like part of. And this was made worse by the fact that they were kind of second-class citizens because they were just clones that were designed to go out and get killed.
I love that. I love the psychology of exploring what it means to not have childhood. Again, it's the thematics, right? I think science fiction, part of what makes science fiction is that it grapples with these big ideas. And so I love looking into the psychology of, again, what does a culture's child rearing or lack thereof do to the psyche and how they relate to each other or relate to other species or relate to their purpose in the universe.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There are two of them in the show that are main characters. And really what it takes to get the younger one, to kind of bond with the rest of the team is the fact that he has a mentor that makes him care about first the mentor, or first his job, and then the mentor himself, and then the rest of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole lot of, it was one season. It was less than a season, actually, because, seasons used to be 24 episodes. And hello to File 13. Yeah, and so then they end up in another war with an alien species, and the remainder of the robots come back and end up siding with the aliens, and yeah, it's a whole thing.
It's a whole mood.
It's a great show. If it had been in a better time slot, and had better marketing, you can find it on YouTube now for free. And I don't know anyone that hasn't watched it and gone, how did this get canceled in like one season? It's amazing. And the cliffhanger it ended on was even more amazing. But yeah, part of what really drove it was this interesting idea of not only you have humans learning to work together and bond together, but they're kind of hampered by this one team member that is just like, I just don't care. Like, I have no parents. I have no dreams. I have no... Like, I will never be allowed to hold office. I will never be allowed to have property. Why do I care? I don't belong with you guys. And it's fascinating. And I actually hadn't thought about it in a while until you mentioned that.
Yeah. I think that's the theme you could also explore with the androids in Omega Horizon. Of they were manufactured for a purpose, and then very often the answer is, well, why are they now on their own making their own decisions, and maybe their creator is dead or passed or who knows, right? But for some reason, they're on their own now. How do they relate to other species? How do they relate to themselves and the idea of a self? And what goals might they have now? Is it some sort of twisting of their original primary objective, right? They were told to defend a specific child, and now they are defenders of all children, right? Or whatever the case may be. They were told to serve a specific company, and now they're climbing the ranks of said company to try to serve it by taking over it, or whatever the case may be. I love those sort of deep explorations of the psyche and how we evolve as individuals.
Okay, well, I think Tomby has been eaten by the rat. We have a couple of people who came in kind of at the last minute. We are very happy to have you. Sorry you missed most of the discussion. It's been amazing. Oh, there he is. The rat's spitting back out again.
I literally couldn't find anything. The dogs were going nuts, so they were going nuts outside, so not in the house. But I couldn't find anything, so I just came back up. I was like,
Yeah, there's probably
can't
nothing there.
Yeah, it's the wife. She's just making it all up. She's just expecting there to be rats and furry things.
Keeping you on your toes.
Yeah, as wives do.
There's a rat in the house. You better clean until you find it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I have to say that I have never seen anything here at all. But every night, if I have to get up in the middle of the night, the cat is sitting there staring underneath the dishwasher in the exact same spot every single time.
Ghosts.
So, yeah, I suspect it's a four-legged tiny ghost. She'll get it eventually. All right, well, I want to go through and give everyone a chance to talk about anything that's coming up, YouTube videos that you've got dropped or coming up, events you're going to be going to, projects or products. There we go. I tried to combine that into one word. So, Tomby, let's start with you.
Right. Okay. What have I got coming up? I'm just actually opening up my schedule. I've actually created a schedule now. It's crazy. Because I am busy. Like everybody, we've all got real life jobs, families, and everything else in between. And I found the easiest way to, obviously, I'm going to see if I can share this. So everyone can see what's got coming up for the Tomby. Yeah, look at that. So, what day are we on today? We're on... It's Wednesday today, isn't it? So, Thursday, 2Ts and Pod, which is the podcast with myself and the wife. We do that Thursdays, do that Saturdays. And that's going to be 1900 British Standard Time or 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. And followed by Death Stranding. And I'm actually going to be squeezing in a couple other games after that as well, because this weekend is Easter weekend. So Friday I've got off and Monday I've got off. This coming Friday is going to be a Rumble exclusive day going forward, because the Rumble creator program is ongoing and growing all the time. I'm actually going to be doing some exclusive stuff over there. So there's going to be a Tomby's 2 pence little mini podcast I'm going to do, followed by some gaming with the wife, and then some further gaming with Major Zap and the boys. Saturday, some World of Warcraft, Anime After Dark, which is our regular watch party with the community, watching currently Lazarus and from Commentary Bumpkin to Master Swordsman. Sunday, the Sunday Spotlight is where we look at small streamers and creators, give them a bit of a shout out, give them a bit of a pep talk, do the old networking and get people introduced to each other, so people can help basically start to grow as content creators. And quite often I'll be creating video guides and uploading those as well. Lastly, Final Fantasy XIV in the evening on the Sunday, and that wraps up the remainder of this week. Of course, thank you very much indeed for Goat for the invite. It's been an absolute pleasure to be on yet again. I've been humbled, guys. I literally came and said, here is Hero Quest. This is something from my youth. And then these two guys just come and drop the actual mic on everything that I'm just showing.
Well, you know, like I said, I probably am going to end up picking up Hero Quest. I've got a friend who's been into it, you know, since childhood, and he's always recommending it to me. And, you know, my boys just love playing games. So I'll probably, it looks pretty cool. I already got it pulled up here, Jungles of Delthrock.
Yep, that's the one.
Cool,
but it's been a pleasure to meet you both as well. Look forward to receiving your books And look forward to playing your games, guys. Look forward to
I
playing your
just
games.
Fantastic.
I just want to know, considering how often you are online, how you have not had a schedule before this, because I have half the streams you do, and I would be totally lost if
Do you
I
know?
didn't have a spreadsheet.
Do you know what it is? I mean, the thing is that because of the way my head works, most of that is exactly the same every time, every week. I don't really need a schedule. But one of the things that I found would help the guys watching is less. This schedule is less about me; it's more about the community and the people that want to watch. I can just update this once a week on a Sunday, throw it onto Twitter, throw it onto the Discord, throw it into community posts, and everybody knows where I'm going to be and what I'm going to be doing. Very visual. I mean, I'm not that together because one of the other streamers I play Final Fantasy 14 with, Bait Linguini, he came up and showed this schedule, and I'm like, why haven't I got one of those? That looks so easy just to explain to everybody what's going on. So yeah,
Yeah,
spend
what Tomby
spend
doesn't
10 minutes and do it.
what Tomby doesn't understand is that I spent all day yesterday going, today's Monday, right?
Yes. Yep.
All right, Aaron.
Sure. Yeah. So, well, I guess I hang out on Twitter. I enjoy the conversations over there. Like I said, lots of fellowship, lots of very clever guys that have just been keeping me entertained. So I'll be there. That's kind of my future plans. I'm also working on a new sandbox campaign that we're just kind of now testing in the house. I mentioned it earlier. It's called Island of the Ape Men, and it's just a big primeval island full of giant monkeys and dinosaurs and ape men, obviously. And so that's something that as I kind of played through some of the material with the family here, I put it up, on the website, and we're just kind of going hex by hex and just developing it as we go. So I'll probably just keep doing that. Just try to play as many games here with the family as I can. And otherwise, like I said, over on Twitter, I do giveaways of the book. Every now and then I'll just I got this beautiful D10 from another wonderful mutual. It's a dark walnut with gold filigree lettering, handmade, big wooden D10. Very cool. So I'll roll that, and we'll pick like somebody from the friends list there, and I'll send them a copy of the physical copy of Fantasy Core. So like I said, I do that from time to time. Otherwise, I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to like bind books. So I'm doing a handmade copy of Tiny D10 right now, and I've got through a few prototypes, and eventually I'll have something I like enough to share. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. And I guess I should probably say really appreciate Tomby, Goat. It's been a very pleasant chat. So I appreciate you guys bringing me on here. Let me talk, Tomby. I appreciate you grabbing a copy of the game, and I hope you get some use out of it.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I'm looking forward to getting the kids involved in it. 100% I
Perfect.
am.
I'm
Can't
excited.
wait.
If you do, I'd love to hear how it goes.
Yeah.
Do you do anything on YouTube? Are you looking in that direction at any
No,
point, or
no,
or
I'm not.
Discord?
No, I feel like the amount of time I spend on Twitter is probably enough as it is. So.
Oh, somebody asked earlier if you were on Discord because they said they were going to look you up if you were. So,
Oh no,
um,
I'm not. But if they're on Twitter, shoot me a message. Like I said, we're a pretty fun group over there.
okay. If you do ever decide, and this actually is, well, Tomby's already on there, but so I have a Discord server for creators to kind of keep in touch with the people in the audience. So as you develop your projects, if you ever get on Discord, you're welcome to join and kind of drop updates, websites for if you're kickstarting something, um,
Very
and
cool.
talk about new stuff. So we want you to be able to stay in touch and not lose any momentum you might have found today. So.
I like it.
Dan.
Yeah, we got a lot coming up. So we originally ran an actual play, 4 long episode actual play during the Kickstarter campaign for Mega Horizon, which is on our YouTube channel. We are planning on doing a second season of that campaign, bringing the actresses back for that. And that was one of our Kickstarter stretch goals. So that will hopefully happen later this year. We're working on the storyline for that now. That's exciting. We're working on a couple of adventure modules. Again, a shorter one-shot, but we're also working on a longer form multi-chapter adventure called Sundown at Sharoon. The hook there is space vampires. It's a little teaser. That'll be something coming out in the future that'll probably make it to Kickstarter, I'd imagine. We are also working on the first of our next 2 games. So Omega Horizon was originally envisioned as a trilogy of games. Omega Horizon is our sci-fi game. We're also doing a high fantasy game called Legends of Draconia, which that's what we're working on very heavily now. It's in playtesting. And then we are going to do a superhero game called Excelsior Ad Infinitum, or EAI for short. And all 3 of those games are going to be cross-compatible. So we pre-balanced all the unique rules ahead of time so that you'll be able to either mesh them together. Let's say you like a Spelljammer type game, Magic in Space. You could take Omega Horizon and Legends of Draconia, smash them together completely and get something that's wholly new. Or you could pick and choose and just say, I really like the species from this book and the careers from that book and the gear from this book. And you could take and choose, and everything is already balanced mechanically. So you can use it however you want. So that's the next thing we have working on. That'll hopefully make it to Kickstarter, I'm thinking, next year. And again, thank you to Goat and Tomby for having me on, and Aaron, it was great meeting you and hearing about you.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, Tomby, thanks for picking up a copy of the game. I hope you make it to our Discord server and let us know what kind of adventures you get up to with the grandkids.
I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to it, brother. Can't wait.
Dan, have I sent you an invite to the creators Discord yet?
I don't think you have, but please do. Yeah, absolutely. I'll join.
Okay, all right. And Aaron, I will send you. No. If I send you one, it's going to expire if you decide 6 months from now that you want to get a Discord. So never mind.
If I find the time, I'll just shoot you a message.
Yeah, no problem. Let's stay in touch.
For sure.
So I am the Eclectic Goat. I want to thank everyone for being here, both in the chat and on the panel. We had several people who kind of came in towards the last minute. I would encourage all of you to go back and check out the live stream, or once I get caught up, all of these fine folk will be on the Slice and Dice minis, though I appear to only get through about one every 2 weeks, so I don't know how long it'll take these ones to get up, but I'll do my best. We are on the Eclectic Herd Discord, so you can get in touch with all of the other creators we've had previously. We have a whole ton of really exciting creators coming up. I was lucky to be able to book 2 weeks ahead to kind of getting swamped, and now I'm booked 2 months ahead.
Nice.
So Natty, yes, you can join the herd. It's just there's herd and there's creators, and so I want you guys to all be able to stay in touch with each other in whatever capacity works best for everyone. There's areas for creators to do self-promotion for new projects, though I do ask that sticking to the topic of creation is kind of my goal. So, if you also do live streams where you play video games, Tomby, I'm gonna borrow you for a second. Tomby does videos where he talks about creating videos. That would be creation. He also does videos where he plays video games. I mean, he technically created the video, but it's not about creation. So that is where I have tried to explain the dividing line, but I don't know how good a job I've done. I will be narrowing down the topic of this channel. I do still plan on doing some media stuff, but that'll all be pre-recorded. I do still plan on doing my indie author interviews for people who write books and are independently published, but those will probably also be either pre-recorded or more towards the day, because many of the people I want to interview are not available in the evenings, or they are from countries even further away than Tomby, and that would be 3 a.m. So we're going to be juggling that schedule around too. This will stay put. I do not see it going anywhere anytime soon, but we may be adding in some playtesting type stuff, reviews. I'm going to be collaborating with some other interested YouTubers, and hopefully we will keep on going strong all summer long.
Very cool.
Again, thank you very much for everyone who was here, and I hope that everyone has an excellent evening, and I wish you all happy headbutting.
Same to you guys. Thanks again.
Cheers, guys. Much appreciated.
Meet me at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the Eclectic Goat, and I'm here to gab with you. We'll talk about immersion, adventure, heavy lows, characters and story, warlocks and barbarians and bards, comedy or horror. We got inspiration if you're in need of it, or just need to hang out somewhere cozy. We're the guys for you, we've got time for you. Come and join the crew, here's what to do. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.